of Ash and Flo. This is Unbillable Hours, a podcast about professional services marketing. Stick around to listen to our insights, tips, and best practices to improve your firm's marketing and even your career.
So let's welcome everybody to this most recent episode of the Unbillable Hours podcast, which is growing in popularity as I've seen the numbers. So thank you all for tuning and listening, and we'll continue to try and make it worth your while. This time with a listicle, Ash, with the 10 mechanisms you should have in your consultancy marketing system. Yeah.
Two things I have before we dive down. One, if our audience is growing, hey guys, feel free to send questions because we are more than happy to answer them. And I guess every time you market stuff in this modern world, you end up getting stuck in some sort of list for something. By the way,
we just listed 10 things. You should have the 10 mechanisms you should have in your marketing engine. Like that's, but by way of how this came about, well, it's a bit of an answer to the question, like, okay, if we wanted to really make sure our marketing function or team or department is hard hitting, what capabilities would it need, right? And so we had a bit of a discussion and we listed those out. And I'm just going to read them in order now. Ash, that'll take 2 minutes and then we wrap. Just kidding. Should I go through we just go through the list and discuss the points, right? Let's do that.
I think, yeah, go through the list. Let's do that.
And we'll just put the listing in the show notes.
You can
download it and hold on to it in case you get lost, because it's 10 points, so it's a longer list. But we start by, what type of stuff do you need in your marketing function? Well, the first mechanism we call the strategy mechanism, right? Which, as you rightfully pointed out, you sort of need that thing that turns the firm's business strategy into a marketing strategy, by which we usually mean you create some clarity around the market segmentation, the firm's positioning, and then also the story and the messaging. And you mentioned an analysis, which, help that here.
Let me just take it from, to the whole thing. First of all, you need to know what your market needs, and you need to do your PESTLE or PESTLE, depending on how you spell it, analysis to understand the entire demands and needs of the market, because this is professional services. We're not selling a new product. So you need to understand what the market needs. And based upon the market needs, you need to segment and figure out what area you're working on to develop your business strategy. You're not like a large-scale consultancy or practice from the get-go. You have to define what that is. This defines your business strategy, from where we get into the marketing strategy of your segmentation, positioning, messaging, because you have to be very prescriptive from the start for your clients to understand what you're trying to solve, who you're trying to solve for, and how you're going to try and solve it.
Yeah. And the better you can describe that, the easier all the rest becomes, right? I think as we go to the next mechanism, one more thing is you build up, as you sort of define the focus, right, of which you can find in the business strategy, what's the focus going to be for your marketing efforts. You should also land on a couple of key themes, right? Usually they are derived from your overall story or your overall messaging, which that's straightforward enough, right? It's also just take a mental note that you'll need those, because the next step then is, we've called it the search mechanism, and we discussed it a little bit because it's not quite clear, but what we mean here is you really need to define those, I'm going to call it 5 to 7, maybe 8 key themes or concepts you want to be known for, market around, post about, that type of stuff, right? So for this humble podcast you're listening to, this would be things like,
let's think about it.
Firm marketing,
business,
marketing strategy for
professional services
consultancies,
marketing,
building the in-house function, these types of stuff. So this shouldn't be an endless list, quite the opposite. It should be sort of short, because you want few points, and then I have a lot to say about those few points, and we'll get into that later. Sorry, you meant to say something, Ash.
Yeah, I was just trying to say that in this particular area, it's like, what think about it. If on a tactical level, if you're looking on digital side, it's what people call SEO. But more than that, it's basically what people would bring you in when they're having a conversation. So when someone suddenly talks about, I want to do a supply chain transformation that basically focuses on, like, what do you say, crisis planning or something like that.
Yeah.
Is your name one that comes up? Then yes, you are. Or I want to do large scale marketing transformation that takes care of something. Yeah.
I like that. I mean, I get it. It's a bit more nuanced than just search terms, but I quite like your metaphor because I think that's what it is, right? The search mechanism should define some key concepts, some search phrases, some hashtags. You know what I mean? That sort of then inform your marketing strategy.
Yeah, it's more than search.
The content part of your marketing, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like when you and I talk about something, like if I suddenly speak about like phones, the first thing that comes to mind is Apple or Google. You're not really going and looking at Alcatel and Huawei and all of that. So it's essentially like when the term that you want to be known for comes up in a conversation, regardless of what the platform is, your name should show up. That's the thing.
Yeah. And if you're asking yourselves, why did you guys even break that out as a specific mechanism? Well, because A, these things might change over time. So it's good to have a system to revisit and update that stuff. And B, they're also important for the third mechanism on our list, which is the inbox mechanism. What that is just a system that helps you capture trends, capture ideas, capture client questions, right, from the projects the firm does, client objections from sales conversations, all that good stuff that helps, again, inform your content strategy. And
as you talk about this flow, I think we can literally call it the capture mechanism because almost everything is capturing, it's the trends, ideas, client questions.
Fair enough. And I think so you see what we did there probably is you shape the strategy with the strategy mechanism. Then you have the search mechanism to establish some clarity around what do we try to capture, and then you build the inbox mechanism, and you build some system for capturing all that stuff. And when we say system, what we mean is you need a repeatable, scalable routine to get to that good stuff. And this could be anything. We talked in previous episodes about just setting up a meeting cadence, right? Where you sit down with the people from the practice every month, every 2 weeks, whatever. We ourselves here do a podcast where we capture our own thoughts around professional service marketing every week, right? Like you can listen to that. So whatever it is, just make sure you have a systematic way to collect all that good stuff. So you have no shortage of inputs to go to when it comes the time to create a content plan. I mean, that's probably straightforward, right? So we can maybe move on. The inputs themselves, the stuff that's in your inbox, is just it's just stuff, right? So you need a sort of processing thing, which brings us to the fourth mechanism, the insights mechanism, right? Here's where you run ideas through the expertise of the firm and the experts to turn them into actual insights and sort of pointy points of view.
So let's take it in front. Let's put it into terms. The capture mechanism captures all the data or data, as some like to call it. It just has all this raw data. And the next part is sorting through this and getting your meaningful information, filtering out all the things that are not necessary and focusing on the key things. Once again, remember, each step is also like a filtering thing because you have to be very prescriptive in your marketing mechanism.
And I think it's also, it's filtering and it's also enriching, right? It's, for example, let's say your inbox mechanism captures a bunch of client questions, right? Like this episode is based on one, right? Which capabilities do I need in my marketing function these days? So the question itself might make for a good piece of content, but chances are it doesn't, right? You need an answer as well. And this is what the insight mechanism does. It takes the inputs and it runs it through the firm's expertise to create something which you can actually use in marketing. And again, the mechanism you need to build here is probably a structured system of conversations, right? Maybe that's another meeting cadence, maybe something else. There might also be merit in you as the marketer bringing some frameworks, right? Ash, you and I talked about the pyramid, the brand pyramid, right? That's one thing to turn loose ideas into a structured piece of communications. There might be other storytelling, whatever frameworks around to use it, but this is the stage where you do it. This is the mechanism you need. The next is packaging. where we just created some insights, but what does that even mean? Right? We now have to turn it into specific messaging points and maybe even offerings. And I should be clear, if I say offerings, I don't mean consulting services, but could be, let's call them marketing offerings, like let's say an event or a webinar, right? So you captured some nice ideas, you turned them into some insights or some stuff you could actually say. So now what is the offering through which you actually take it to market, as it were, right? That's the packaging piece.
So in the packaging mechanism is where you develop your channel strategy and figure out which message goes into what channel. And you also, in this particular segment, is where you figure out this is going to be a white paper. This is going to be a specific point of view that we stand by, or this is going to be a large scale piece of thought leadership that can be broken down to different things before being put into channels. This is that area of the whole,
and I think the next one then is easy. It's we call this the content mechanism, right? Now we have our points of view, we have our idea for what might happen in the channel. Now we just got to create it, right? Like we are doing this right now. We are recording the podcast.
Now you need to create the content.
Yeah, you got to just put it together, right? And then sort of logically, right after that comes the distribution. Sorry, say again.
Yes. No, I was saying you basically, that phase is just about creating the right kind of content. Are you doing videos? Are you doing written content? Are you doing like audio clips? Are you doing social posts? And then, as you were saying, Flo, it comes to the distribution, redistribution, where you then push this right content into those channels, not just blindly put it into a channel, but also figure out what is the best way to get your reach, get your maximum amplification, and hit all your key targets at the same time. For events, it's inviting the right clients and talking to them. For social media, it's putting in the right channel to amplify. For videos, it's making sure it's again in the right channel so that people can watch. And also this is also where you apply the strategy of understanding, yes, this particular thing, is better off as a video, or it's better off as a podcast, or whatever. This is an execution. Strategic execution mechanism.
That's where you execute the distribution part of the game. And I think people can't see this, but in our notes we put in parentheses a for distribution mechanism, so redistribution, and we wrote publishes and repurposes exclamation mark again in parentheses. I think we should maybe stress that it's not about having one great idea, writing one LinkedIn post and then forget about it, right? It's about, or even a blog post or even a research piece, right? The repurposing, I think, is so important because so many people we talk to always say that they don't have enough content or they struggle with the consistency. Well, if you use the search mechanism to define the 5 or 8 things you want to write about, then you stick with those 5 or 8 and you just repurpose, right? What you say to those 5, you'll have enough stuff to go for a long time.
Repurpose until it's repurpose until it's no longer valid, which is rarely the case. So what you just need to do is refresh by adding a few bits and pieces. Like a good example will be there's loads of books written on geopolitics, right? So what happens with these books is they publish a minor update every year or two to reflect on what's going on at that particular point. Rather than rewrite the entire thing, do that. Textbooks do this. This is essentially the thing. Go by what you have seen in textbooks. Academics, who are basically a lot of the people who do these research, they know this really well, that until like some major disruptive thing comes along, it's going to be the same thing with some iteration here and there.
And I think you can see this in very successful thought leaders or even very successful social media influencers. They talk about 3 to 4 things all the time. It's like the same stuff all the time. For some people, it gets to a point of where if I see they are a guest on a podcast, I'll be able to tell you in advance what they're going to say in the show, because they'll say the exact same thing they've said a number of times. I mean, they'll package it slightly differently. There will be different anecdotes. The order in which the arguments are made might be different, and they'll even connect it to actual stuff that's happening today. So they keep it relevant, but the core essential ideas will still be the same. And to be very clear, that's fine, right? because that's their thing, and the same is true for your firm. There's no need to come up with a new idea every week. You can talk about, what was it you said before, supply chain transformation, crisis planning and supply chain, right? Anyways, moving on. There's more left in our lists, Ash, so we're going at a good clip.
Well,
the next one?
Yeah, because I think we kind of touched upon promotion mechanism in our distribution mechanism, but essentially it's basically how do you convert your readers, rather your content consumers, into prospects? That's exactly. Basically what you were talking about. You didn't touch upon that.
And we put this in here because I think that's an important distinction which many consulting firms in particular struggle with. They're usually good content publishers, right? All of you out there, that's what we're great at. We have surveys, we put stuff out, we have the LinkedIn in control. But what we're not so good at is then once we have built an audience, once we've built a readership, sort of bringing them in, taking them onto the next step of the journey, right? Usually it's publish, and then wait until someone comes and asks for the business. Yes. Why though? We could do some promotional activities, and I know that's not always easy to sell to the practice, but it's just the truth. And this is what that connects back to the packaging mechanism. If we have some stuff we can offer besides just the research report, make this a webinar, make it an event, make it, God forbid, a paid for workshop, which clients could take. And now's the time. This is the mechanism that sort of, yes, I'll use that word, sells that to get people in a first slightly more meaningful transactional exchange with the firm. So now they're not just leaving their time or their attention or maybe even their email address. No, maybe they spend a significant amount of time. Maybe there's even some money down, that type of stuff. So that's why we sort of, I think, split distribution and then explicitly promotion out here, because that's something where many firms can improve, right? And then whether you do that or not, you'll have to move on to step 9, which that is conversion, right? So, and this is true whether you did the promotion mechanism piece or not. At some point in time, the reader or the people who attended your first workshop have to be turned into prospects. And I don't mean to hate on forms, Ash, but just not my point. But I think what we're trying to say here is not like having some squeeze pages and conversion forms and that type of stuff. What we mean by conversion mechanism is think smartly about the client journey, right? So yes, they've read your report. Yes, they've seen the LinkedIn posts. Yes, they have picked you up on the invitation to the webinar. Now what? And again, this is an area where I see many firms not struggle. They just don't think about it, right? Like, what's the next step? What is the follow up? What are the sequences from there to the next big thing? Yeah.
This is where data literacy is really important, because like as you're pursuing these particular leads and prospects, you got to make sure that that you have the right means and ways to contact them, that you don't contact them in different at the wrong time on the journey. You make sure that you don't irritate them. You make sure that you have the right means and to either contact or not contact. You make sure this is the massage and nurturing part of your leads. This is that part where you actually, like, you've already done like a touch point with them. You've already spoken to them. And this is that part where you develop that trust, build a relationship, and make them from cold to warm to hot.
Yeah. And it's exactly like you said, so having the data and I think it's both, right? It's having the plan and then having the data to make sure you can execute the plan. And again, this is not a comment on the entire market, but I see this very, very often. Firms will plan the editorial calendar. They maybe even have an events calendar. They do follow up to a certain extent after, let's say, an event, but there's no real, like from there's no real plan, right? And I don't mean like this is very tactical, but for example, the number of webinars which end on a notion of, oh, and if you're interested or have questions, just reach out anytime, right? Versus a webinar that says, if you're interested to learning more, we'll have a 2-day, I don't know, masterclass session on this stuff on the last week of April. Like, do you know what I mean? Like making it specific, like making very clear for people what could be the next step into a deeper business relationship with the firm. that usually doesn't happen, and that's just quite a bit of potential.
Yes, into the relationship.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the exact thing. It's about deepening that relationship. Absolutely.
And then the last of the 10 obviously is, which we've talked about this at length, the optimization mechanism, which that goes to your favorite point, or one of your favorite points, Ash, is just measure everything and make sure it gets better over time. I don't know. That's literally, I can keep it as short as that, but that's the idea, right? You have to have some sort of dashboard with some sort of dials that show you that all the stuff you just did in the previous 9 is working, and if it's not working, how you might be able to improve it.
Workings. Yeah, it's that part where you take your learnings to start this entire system and process again. This is essentially the stage that's fairly internal to make sure that you can continue on this, recycle, reiterate, and then start again.
Yeah. So
eventually this process becomes so smooth. Yeah.
That's true. And maybe in closing, I'll read through the list of 10 again, just so we have touched upon them all. But a question I could see come up is where's the planning, right? Where's the marketing planning? Where is there no mechanism for creating a marketing plan? The answer to that for me is that you could either say that is included in the strategy mechanism up top, right? Where we say we turn the business strategy into a marketing strategy, and that marketing strategy obviously has a budget and all that stuff. Or it's included in the content mechanism where you plan the content.
No, the planning is like, just to correct Flo, planning is already there. When you create your marketing strategy, you do the pestle analysis. You already have the strategy mechanism. You already created marketing strategy there. And when you're doing the content stuff, you do the marketing planning. We're just not explicitly calling it out.
I think that's the right way of framing it. I didn't put it as an explicit mechanism here because I just don't like this notion that the marketing planning and the marketing plan, these are key deliverables throughout the year. So there's almost like I'm not saying planning gets done for the sake of planning, but it's just a ritualized huge piece of work that gets done, as opposed to this should be so much baked into the other stuff to be as practically invisible. Like it's like doing email. Yeah, of course you need a plan. Of course you need, stuff has to be structured, but that's part, like you said, that's part of the strategy. And then there's also smaller plans around the content stuff in other places, but it shouldn't be that, or I don't know, it shouldn't be. I don't want to say that, but I'm always amazed by how it can take up almost an entire quarter to build massive plans, which then on the flip side, sometimes, don't have that much impact at all. So maybe that was a bit of a rant, but there you have it. Should we wrap this up, Ash? I don't know.
I think it's pretty good to wrap this up at this point. Yeah.
So there you have it, people. We did a listicle piece. 10 mechanisms you should have totally in your marketing engine to make it run and purr and stuff. So we had the strategy mechanism for strategy, search to define the key topics or filter the stuff you do, inbox for capturing great ideas to create marketing experiences and content, insights to turn those ideas into something that's actually new and fresh and worth consuming, packaging to create specific marketing offers and points of use, content just to turn out the content, distribution obviously to get the content to where it has to be, promotion for very similar to distribution, but here it's specifically advertising ways in which people can deepen the relationship with the firm, then conversions, right? Capture all the people who do want to engage with the firm in some way, and optimization of cost to measure and improve across the entire engine setup. We're getting more and more car metaphors. Last time you had this thing with the tires, which was quite good. This time we have an engine. I don't know. I think it was good. Maybe people found it helpful. Do let us know if it's the case. If not, just yell at us for why you think it's wrong. And you can do all of that on LinkedIn, of course, or you leave a rating in the various places. Where do people go to rate us? It's Apple Podcasts still on later, right?
Apple Podcasts. I think you can start rating people in Spotify. But hey, let us know if you want to.
Do you know what? I tried to find that. I tried to creep in there and sort of give my own podcast 5 stars, but I couldn't find it, so I don't know how that goes. Anyways, that's it. I'm gonna stop the recording here. So happy Friday, and then for the listeners, whenever you listen to this, have a great time. afterwards.
Yep. See you soon.
Thanks for listening to Unbillable Hours. If you want more, tune in next week. You know where to find us.